Connecting here. My man.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Not a lot. How are you?
Good, man. Just getting up from moose camp last night. I got in kind of late back to the house. So
Dude, I loved your pictures. I'm glad we got to catch up a little bit this morning.
yeah,
So everybody can kind of catch up here a little bit. Let's tell everybody who David Ford is, and then how your journey kind of started. A little bit in South Dakota, and now you're in Alaska.
yeah. So I'm active military. I'm stationed up here now. I was in, like you said, I was in Alaska, or I was in, excuse me, South Dakota for 4 years. That's kind of where the whole Western thing got started. Being from the South, coastal guy, I could take you to hunt gators and we can kill 140-pound whitetails in the swamp. But as far as spot and stock mule deer and in west South Dakota with no trees whatsoever, that was definitely it seemed like an impossible task. I got hooked up with a really good guy I hunt with, and he kind of showed me the ropes. And within 3 days of the first season in 2016, I was within 3 yards of a bedded buck and with the stick and string. And at that point, I knew it could be done, especially from a coastal redneck, I would say. So I knew it could be done. I took a couple seasons. 2016 was a strikeout. 2017, I went across the pond, did some stuff over there in the desert. 2018, I came back and we really hit it off hard, hunting some good ground, and I got lucky and shot my first buck. That was the one in Eastman's, the velvet buck we named Tom.
That was a good
So
buck.
yeah, dude, he was. It all happened so fast. I mean, the story's in there. We'd stalked him a couple of times that week. Usually, I take 2 weeks off for the season,
Okay.
just to let especially with the new rule in South Dakota. Residents can have that whole first month of September to kind of free reign of the state with stick and string, and that
Right.
makes a huge difference, especially with obviously bucks batched up and they haven't really got any smart senses yet.
Dude, I tell you what, this year you could really feel the difference having that. We were out those first several days of the season,
Yep.
and last few years, that couple little spots that I hunt, the public spots, have been smashed by
Yeah.
non-red. A lot of Minnesota guys in there, which is great that they're coming over and hunting. But it was so nice. I had the place to myself this year. There wasn't
Yeah.
one. It was great. Like, and
Yeah.
what that South Dakota did to prioritize that a little bit.
Yeah. The first season, like when I went back 2016, I had my dad out. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was,
Yeah.
I didn't have a clue. But that first morning, you're sitting on a 6,000 piece chunk of BLM,
Hmm.
and you're looking around, and there's bedded bucks here, there's bedded bucks there, and there's not a soul around. And it almost to the point where you feel like you're breaking the law. Like am I doing something illegal? Like, why is there so much critters to chase and there's nobody doing it with me? So
Right.
um, yeah. And then 2018, I shot that buck. I also had a West River tag. I shot a buck with the rifle and then another Hills whitetail. So that was a really successful, blessed year.
Good year. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a magical year, especially I
What
think. Well,
what was
yeah,
that
that
going from, you know, where you were, where you go shoot a gator and that just switch
yeah,
that fast all the way into like you have this vast prairie, you can glass sit up in glass forever, get multiple tags like that. What
yeah.
like with that change?
It's like I come from a small farm, and we have management on the farm.
Mhm.
Kind of almost like a safe haven dad's kind of created and family has over the years. So uh, just not really kind of filling the freezer. So yeah, I mean, going from that stuff to sitting in a tree stand, hunting timber bottoms and stuff like that, to overlooking west side of the Badlands, or south of the Black Hills, and the Elk Mountains on the west side. Like it's just it's indescribable. I mean, when I was showed the kind of a few of the places, like, hey, you can hunt all this and hunt all that, and then that was in 2016, and then 2017 did a lot of research because I was gone most of this all of the season, and then 2018 going in with all the knowledge and just trying to hunt as much as I could, and it was just insane. Like it was just like a kid at candy,
Yeah.
or like at Santa's workshop, and it's like, hey, you got free reign, do ethical. make ethical decisions, and good things will happen. And I was blessed. 2018 was a very successful year. That was the first buck I'd shot since, man, I don't know, 2001. It was a long time. It was a long, and that last buck I shot before the 2018 buck is mounted. That was my first big buck. Me and my dad had shot together on a youth hunt in South Carolina. Yeah, it was a long stretch there that I kind of got away from what I was raised as. Just where I was stationed at wasn't the type of hunting I was used to. You know, had to hunt in clubs and stuff like that. It just wasn't as free reign as I was raised to be. And then going away, especially in getting back to bow hunting. Yeah, that buck was my first archery buck. I shot a doe that Sunday. I dropped off a friend at the airport, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go drive the hills, and I'd found a lone whitetail out there, and I stalked her, and I was able to be successful on that, and
Nice.
that just it fueled it. And then I shot my buck on that Friday, which was the 6th, and then my buddy Nick, that I always hunt with, he shot his on the 7th. One draw over from where I shot mine. He called me kind of out of breath, and I knew it was about that time in the evening. And he called me. He's like, "Hey, how fast can you be out to the Cheyenne River?" And I was like, "I can be there now." And we were able to get his buck out, and
It's awesome.
yeah, we both picked him up from the taxidermy the exact same day. It was my first archery buck, and he was a dandy at that to be what he was. And yeah, we got the call and picked him up together, and it was a really, really special moment. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
yeah.
You went and turned around last year, and
Yeah.
it's a heck of a velvet mule deer.
Yeah, so last year I chased that buck, and hopefully I should be getting him back hopefully this week. I mean, the 16th is when I shot him last year.
Okay.
Chased him in velvet. Actually have both of his sheds. We found him. I mean, to find matches, as you know, is pretty tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've been lucky. My best day, I found 3 matches in a day. Like, that was pretty not typical.
No.
But we were walking back to the truck, walking this 2-track back to the truck, and if it was a snake, we'd have been bit. That's how close they were. I mean, right together. I mean, they were. And then, going through videos and stuff and hunting kind of the same area, and over the few years, you kind of have some history with deer and stuff. And we had found him in 2018, and I had those sheds. And in 2019, I hunted. It was my last day of leave. I had a buddy flying in from Alabama to go chase goats. And, Nick was like, hey, I was sitting there. I'd sat in his bed basically 15 yards from him for, I don't know, 2.5 hours, waiting for him to do something.
Yeah.
And then I looked down at my phone. I got a message, and Nick's like, I got to go back to Rapid. I got to refinance my house. He's like, you're on your own. I was like, well, I'm in his bedroom. I was like, hey, whatever happens, I'll call you, whatever happens.
Yeah.
And about, I don't know how long it was after that, I'm sitting there on my hands and knees, and I had this valley that, the sun was starting to hit him, so I knew he was going to get up. As you know, mule deer don't like the sun, especially when they're napping.
Yep.
So I figured, the funny thing was there was 2 bucks bedded. The bigger one was below him. He was a younger buck, so we were hoping that he would survive the gun season. He didn't. He was bigger, but younger, probably a 170 frame buck. I mean, he was really, really pretty. Yeah, just a stud. And he blew out like right early on in the stock.
Okay.
I mean, these bucks were 25 yards apart, and he blew out, and I drew back because I knew that buck was going to go with him. I mean, why wouldn't he not? He never moved out of his bed, so I drew down, and yeah, that. He started. You could see him. He was shaking his head, getting ready to stand up, and I was like, "All right, here it goes."
Yeah.
And I drew back, came the full draw, and I stood up. And when I stood up, I think it scared him because he bounded from his bed. And luckily, I just switched to a 3-pin slider, so I had a 20, 30, and a 40.
Yep.
So I knew, I was like, man, if you give me a chance, I have a chance now. But what I think, in my opinion, a big buck spooks, he's usually gone. There's no let's linger around, especially a 5-year-old, 6-year-old deer. But what I think happened is he might have thought I was that other buck and he came back to investigate, and that's where he slipped up. Because I was full draw. I was on the right side of the cedar tree I was sitting at, and he looped around and he came behind these just kind of two bushes, and he needed one step, and he was at 15 yards. And he took one step, and I put it right in his chest. And I think it's a very ethical shot, especially at under 20 yards. I mean,
Oh,
you're trying to hit a a dinner plate. I mean, if I could put it in that white patch on his chest, especially shooting a 500 grain arrow,
yep.
he might not die right away, but he's going to die. I think it's a very ethical shot if you're in tune with your stuff, and I feel like I have done that. But yeah, he ran, went down the draw, and he was bounding, and I wasn't really happy about it. And then he came out of the draw. We're talking 100 yards, and you could tell he was hurting. And I was like, all right, well, that's good. He bedded down immediately. You know, got my stuff together. I watched him kind of crest over the knoll. I was like, well, I got to keep eyes on him. I don't want him to get away. And
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get back downwind, to get downwind of him, loop back around, and I came over the knoll, and I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of looking through this yucca plant, and I can hear the unmistakable, like you take an arrow and you fling it, like you hear that boom, boom, right?
Yep.
He was pawing at that arrow in his chest, and I knew I was close, and it kind of tore me up inside that buck was suffering. So I did everything I could. I got over, drew back, and I mean, he was 10 yards. I could see that sweet pocket in the triangle, and I let her rip, and complete pass through. He went 30 yards, and
Awesome.
I watched him take his last breath, and I didn't go to him right immediately because I messaged, I called Nick. I was like, hey, I just watched him. He's done, and he's like, well, don't send me any pictures or anything. I was like, well, I'm not going to go down to him. I'll wait till you get here from Rapid, and that's about 45 minutes, and especially if you're going the speed limit, right? So
Not when your buddy's excited about seeing this.
yeah, exactly. So because he shot his on the second day of the season, I watched all that go down through the spotter. He shot a really good, beautiful buck. That was over pretty quick. But yeah. And then we were able to pile him up. It was a huge body buck. I mean, had a big Roman nose. So my buddy's calling me the whole time. He's at the airport waiting for me to pick him up, and it's like noon. I'm like, hey man, yeah, you're gonna help me cape out a mule deer today. So we were able to get him. We were able to get him all in the truck, luckily, and we drug him up in the truck and back to Rapid we went. Yeah, that was a fun, pretty special day. I mean, he's a nothing. He doesn't break any record books, but he's a record book buck by my standards. He's a big, old, mature buck, and at that point in time, that it was I beat him at his own game, more or less. It was a special day. So,
And I feel like we have a lot of mule deer bucks like that in South Dakota that never score, enough to make record book, but age class wise,
yeah,
we have that. I've been lucky enough to shoot a couple, 7-year-old, we thought were 6, 7-year-old deer because we had seen them several years. Yeah, and they hit that 170 mark or
yeah,
up in the 170s, but they're never breaking 80.
yeah. It's
Old
like
deer, they're so tough to kill.
I tell people all the time. I was like, if you want to go out and fight on a 150 buck, like I can take you to four
Yeah.
or five different spots on public land that I can find you a 150 buck
Mm-hmm.
fairly easy. I mean, there's going to be some effort, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like the quality and quantity is very spread out across the state from all the way. I've hunted like Sage Creek area, which where that's probably at.
Yeah.
Like out in the Badlands, all the way to on the border of on the Elk Mountains. I've seen good bucks out there, so it doesn't matter. Slim Buttes all the way up north, all the way down. There's good bucks everywhere. You put in that 10% more than the next guy, and you're going to find something very.
That's the biggest thing. You kill a couple good deer, you get a lot of messages a year from guys asking what you did.
Yeah.
You've got
Oh,
that.
yeah, and
But the answer to that is truly like what you just said. Any unit, if you're looking for mule deer, about any
Yeah.
unit in South Dakota, if you're willing to put forth a little bit more effort, there's an opportunity there for you.
yeah, for sure. I mean, like I've hunted all over that western side of the state as much as I could, and I really didn't need to do a whole lot to find a good buck. I mean, obviously the guys who've been there like yourself and who have been in the state a lot longer have those hunting holes, and and they produce really big bucks. But as far as going to find a quality buck with a stick and string, like that's not an issue. Even during rifle season, I mean, my rifle buck with he grosses just over 160,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a beautiful buck. And the way that all went down was another crazy tale. But yeah, I mean, from the hills, I've seen them really good stuff. I mean, yeah, you name it. There's quality all over the place
For
out
sure.
there.
So, you transitioned from East Coast into South Dakota, a little bit more Western style hunting, and now this year you packed her up, you drove all the way up to Alaska. So you're stationed in Alaska right now, and you
Yeah,
had a couple big adventures already. You've taken advantage of living
yeah.
in Alaska, and you had an awesome caribou adventure here a few weeks ago, and then last week you were hunting moose. Let's get into a little bit of that caribou first, kind of what you did to get everything rounded up what you needed. You soloed that, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. So like you said, I packed up. I've only officially been in state since July 15th.
Yeah,
So
2 months.
yeah, exactly. And then that all went down last month with the caribou. And I've been hunting moose every few days. I'm back up at moose camp hiking in. Yeah. So drove across, did the whole across the country. Well, not across the country. South Dakota, went to Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Washington, drove up through British Columbia, the Yukon. Yeah, that was pretty much, I mean, more or less you're by yourself because Canada's closed for anybody who's not on official travel. So you're driving hours, and like a dummy, I didn't download any podcasts or
Oh no.
so I'm just listening to the wind driving across British Columbia and the Yukon. So
Whoops.
yeah, zero contact with anybody. I mean, you're not getting cell service in those places.
No.
But it was very. I mean, you start thinking about stuff you did in sixth grade and like,
Mhm.
why did I do that? Yeah. So yeah, the mind is a pretty special. Anyway, did all that. Got into Fairbanks. Had to do the whole quarantine thing with job and everything. So did that, and then as soon as I got out of quarantine, I went right over to Fish and Game. Like, hey, what can I have? And like, you can do this. So the hunt that I did is called the RC 860 hunt, which is the 40-mile herd,
Okay.
and it's a pretty popular hunt, especially with it being just north of Fairbanks. Basically, the 40-mile herd stretches from Fairbanks all the way to Canada. Right, that's their big herd. You're looking at 80,000 caribou in that's spanned, and obviously they're transitioning from calving ground to wintering ground, and people are trying to catch them in that transition. I mean, that's what everybody's really doing. So
Mhm.
I had no idea. Some guys that showed me on the map, like, hey, this is the highway everybody takes. You can hike in, or some people take four wheelers. A lot of people take four wheelers, but I didn't want to do that. So,
Yeah.
and I don't have one, so that's kind of eliminates that. Not that I really would want to do that anyway. I think Remy Warren said it best. I think you need to suffer.
Exactly.
If you're going to take life of something, whether it be uncomfortable sleeping, a long pack in, long pack out, unsuccessfulness, whatever your
Definition.
hurting, your definition of hurting is, right? So that's always a factor. Went it the first weekend of the hunt, and it was kind of pure chaos. I saw caribou, but it was a pretty populated area with people. Like, I mean,
Okay.
and I had some chances like early morning on the opening morning. We're all socked in with fog. I come over the ridge, and there's probably a herd of 25 within bow range, like coming across. But like caribou, they're not stopping for anything, because if they stop, they're a target, right? Like
Yeah.
wolves, bears, hunters, like they're always moving. They're always doing something, right? So one, it was on some top of a ridge. I don't want to take that shot. And then obviously with me being a non-resident, I have to take a bull. So even young
Oh,
calf or young bulls and calves or cows look identical. They have small horns,
okay.
but you're looking to make sure you can identify as a male, obviously based on organs, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's one of those things you have to make sure, unless he's got what I shot, right? Like, that's a 99% male, and that was kind of the first thing I did when I rolled him over. I was like, all right, we're cool. He's 100% male, 100% bull. So that weekend went by. That was 4 days, three and a half days of just learning, right?
Yeah.
Just all learning. So,
Yeah. And I
and
was
then
Nevada. I was out in the backcountry
Right.
out of service. We had talked on Instagram right as I was going out of service, and you were going hunting, and I was like, when I got back into service, you're like the first page I checked, dude.
It was a
Hammered a big bull.
yeah. So I mean, like, I when I hiked in the day before the season, I mean, I was probably not even a half mile from the truck, and the one of the videos I posted, there's these bulls in the skyline, and that was those bulls. Gorgeous bulls. Would have been happy with any of those, but wasn't obviously opening day, so we had to move past, or I had to go past them. So anyway, a week goes by. Actually, 2 weeks goes by. I couldn't get back up the next weekend, but 2 weeks goes by. And then as the numbers go up, as far as harvest numbers, they will either extend or close different zones. There's 4 zones, and every zone is a little different, or 4 or 5 zones. I'm not really sure. So as the numbers, get filled, they'll close the zone. So you have to obviously move down the road. And so I went back up. Some guys that gave me some intel, like, hey, mile marker, one or whatever it was down the highway. There's some good herd numbers. You can be good. So I drove down there to the pullout, and there was guys with ATVs and trailers and all that jazz. And I was like, man, I don't want to do this. So I went back up literally 2 miles down the road from where I started 2 weeks prior. And the chances of the big herds have already gone through, right? I mean, they're migrating. So,
right.
But I pulled back in there. There was a really pretty opening up a valley, and the sun was hitting it. So I pulled over, had some lunch, threw the spot and scope up, and up the valley. I was there 3 minutes. I saw a lone cow going across. I'm like, so I got all my stuff in order and hiked in. As the crow flies, 3 miles.
Okay.
And if you walked on tundra, it's not fun.
Yeah, it's you sink 6 inches every step.
Yeah, it's like walking on sponges, and that's on top of a waterbed. That's
right.
Yeah. So yeah, it was super fun going up. Get all the way to the top, and I set up camp and start glassing right away. And right across the ridge, I found there's a group of like 7 or 8 caribou, 4 or 5 good bulls, but they were feeding the wrong way. I'm eating them to feed my way into the valley where they should be migrating, but they weren't. They were going back to where I was 2 weeks prior. So I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I sat there, and I had glassed a few that night, different canyons, but nothing was within striking distance, because I mean, more or less, you're not going to outrun them. You're not going to outgain
right.
them. So if you can put yourself in a position of like, hey, I can funnel them in here, or I can make a shot. So that night, I was sitting at the top of the valley in this bowl, and this pretty nasty storm come in. And I've been in some decent storms throughout, I guess, my life, but
yeah,
not to the point where like I'm almost getting ready to send in-reach messages, because like me and the big man upstairs had to have a talk. Like, just let me get through this night, because it was pretty hairy. I actually got out of the tent, and I hiked down the mountain as fast as I could and got under a rock shelf. Just the sheer aspect, I was like, well, if it's going to strike this rock shelf, I'm going to die from the rock crushing me versus the lightning strike, right? So I hiked down, and I sat there for probably 45 minutes, and luckily the rain gear did good. And because the way the storm was coming, it had the high pressure coming over the mountains, and the storm, it was just kind of sitting right above me. And
okay.
You get that feeling like, your skin starts to crawl, like, all right, it's time to go. And so me and the big man upstairs, we had some chats underneath that rock, and we made amends, and we went back up, and I got back in the tent, and everything was good. Next morning I got up 5:30 or so, super socked in, couldn't see 50 yards.
Yeah.
Waited an hour, made some coffee, and then it started opening up, and I could see across the valley probably 1,500 yards straight line, and I was just looking without any optics. I could see some movement. So I threw the glass up, and all I could see was a big mane and a nice bull, and he's feeding to where I need him to feed. So I freak out because he's by himself. Usually,
Yeah.
they said big bulls are by themselves usually. So I saw all I needed to see, and he was going the way I needed him to go. So there was a kind of a rock outcrop, maybe 100 yards from camp. So I grabbed all my stuff real quick, ran over there, and this is probably 3 minutes. Within 3 minutes, I had lost him on a giant mountainside. I don't know where he went. We bedded down, and because I didn't have the tripod to really grid everything, but I was pretty mad. Couldn't find him. Pretty ticked off, and I was like, all right, well, it's early, whatever. I'm gonna go back to grab the tent, grab the tripod, and really grid everything. So as I turn around to go back to camp, I look up on the mountain right behind camp, maybe 400 yards, and I see this bush like moving. Like I'm like, and I throw the glass up, and it's the bull I evidently went and shot. But I'm sitting there and I look at him, and all I could see was tops and shovels are shot, and just like, holy cow! Like this is, I mean, it's well within range at this point. So I kind of blacked out. I don't know, 80, 90 yards from where I first saw him, made the shot about 320. And yeah, he was sitting there, didn't have a clue in the world I was there, and by himself. Made the adjustments on the scope as I needed. And the crazy thing, because I'm shooting at a 6.5 PRC.
Yep.
So it's kind of a little, some people would argue it's a little undergunned for Alaska, but I can attest to what it did to this caribou. It went through both shoulders, and I mean, perfect center mass. But he was scratching this side, so he was turned away from me, scratching his shoulder.
Okay.
That round went through both shoulders, and it went out his bottom jaw, like crazy. Because when I was caping him out, I could hear yeah, he was turned this way, so it went through everything, and it came out as like bottom jaw. I never would have thought it would have busted through all that, and it still had enough energy to do that. But yeah, I was caping him out, and I looked down, and I could see a small little hole in his bottom jaw, and I was like, well, that's crazy, like, and the round did everything it was supposed to, and he expired, I mean, seconds.
Yeah.
And then all the adrenaline kind of sunk in. I sunk in. I didn't really know what I'd had or how big he was. I knew he was a bull, and he was going home with me. That's what I knew. And
Yep.
Kind of got back to reality, came down from the cloud for a second, went to the tent and grabbed everything, tags and all that stuff. And as I'm hiking up to him, I know, like, I'm seeing what is in front of me, and just a stud bull. He's got scratchers. He's got a big, axe handle for a shovel. He's got big bezzes. Tops are great. He's got decent beams. I mean, just everything you could ever. I mean, not many people are going to turn down that bull, I don't think. I know I wasn't. I wouldn't. I wouldn't turn down a spike. I wasn't going to be picky. I was going to be taking any opportunity I could.
Yeah.
And it just was pretty surreal to sit there and just be on that mountain. And I had nobody come by. I was pretty much by myself until the very end of the hunt, as I got back to the truck. But so that was 7:30 or so that morning. Had them all cut up, ready to rock and roll by 2 o'clock maybe.
Okay. Nice.
So yeah, it was took two trips to get him down. The first one was pretty rough because I was pretty hopped up on adrenaline still, and I packed up all of camp, which I don't pack too heavy, but I packed up all of camp and 3/4 and back straps, and I just used the
Dude,
I'm not trying to be a macho guy. Like, that was dumb. That was dumb. But luckily it was all downhill, so I know if I could get the majority of the load the first round while I was feeling pretty good,
Yep.
I'd be fine. So carried them all down, put him in the truck, and then back up, and I got the cape, another shoulder, tent, because I put everything in the tent. I didn't want him to be sitting in the sun, which it wasn't a whole lot of sun up there anyway. But yeah, everything was in the tent. Got back up there, packed the rest of them out. Drove the hour and a half to Fairbanks, dropped them off at the taxidermist, and I called the taxidermist. And when I got back to service, I made the post that, like, hey, where's a good reputable dealer or reputable taxidermist? I don't know anybody, so people start chiming in on their stuff. Like, this guy is the best, and it's the same with tattoo artists or mechanics. So everybody's got their personal preference. Well, one guy kept popping up, so I called him. It's Sunday evening. I'm telling my backstory. He's like, well, yeah, bring him by. Let's see what you got. He's like, I'm pretty full, but we'll take a look. And I'm like, I can respect that. So I brought him by, opened up the truck, and the first thing he said, he goes, "Yeah, I'll mount him for you." So
Doesn't get
that
too
made
many of those ones in there.
yeah. So he made me feel pretty confident that I had something pretty special.
That's so cool.
Which it was special to me. Like I said, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
he was big, but at the same time, it was everything I could have hoped for and more. So, yep, dropped him off, and yeah, that was it for that. And then, I mean, I didn't get back to base that night till midnight after dropping meat off to let it hang and stuff like that. So that was a full 12, 14 hour day, but it didn't feel like 12 or 14 hours, put it that way. So
yeah, that's so
it
awesome.
happened. It happened quick, and then the last 2 weekends, I've been doing the moose camp down south of where I'm at. Just beautiful country. It's all non-motorized area, so you have to hike
Aw,
in or pack horses, So we've seen. I've saw two cows, bunch of bear sign, bunch of wolf sign or some wolf sign, but plenty of other cows and I know bulls are in the area. It's just a matter of time. It's kind of warm right now, so it's kind of
sure.
they're not really moving. A 1,200-pound creature doesn't really want to move around in 60-degree weather and chase girls. Like I don't blame them there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a matter of time. We got the 25th is when is over. So we got 12 more days left
Okay.
to try to get it done. But with me being a non-resident, it's got to be 4 brow tines or 50 inches, right? Obviously, I don't. I'm not a. It's gonna have to be 4 brow tines unless he's just a crazy monster and he looks 50 inches, But just to see one would be awesome. Like,
Oh yeah.
um, and when we were packing in Friday, there was a pack train came out and they had a good 3 point bull on their horses. That was cool to see. So it gives you a little bit of hope, even though they were probably double what we were in. Obviously, with horses, I would be too.
Of course.
But yeah, but you don't want to get 10 miles in there and on the last day tag out, and then you got 600 pounds of deboned meat to get out of there.
And
10 miles single trip. I mean, that's a lot.
that's what people, you stop and think about, and that's what I had to deal a lot with that when I was in Nevada. Was I went back in a couple of these areas, after I was actually already, backpacked in with my camp, and then from there you're hunting your camp, and then you get back to some of these areas and you like start calculating the mileage, and you're like, dude, it's 6 miles to my camp, and then another 6 miles to my truck. You're like, why am
Yeah,
I here right now?
yeah,
Because it's just, and it's one thing when you have a buddy with you,
yeah,
but by yourself, like you do the calculations, you're like, this is 90 miles of just packing out meat.
yeah.
Like,
And especially like you're in high country Nevada, that's a lot. You're taking a risk there with meat spoilage, right? You need to get it
yep,
cooled off as quick as possible, but you also want to be,
ethical
you know,
about.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's a tough situation. It's a
I
big
actually,
pill to swallow.
yeah, I actually moved back into some different areas where it was more, you know, like a dual. Like it wasn't that you, like you said, it's not that you're not physically capable of going hunting back here, but it's just the limitations on 90, 95 degree
Yeah,
getting out on your own. Um, and so yeah, I hunted, like I actually moved in closer, and everybody was pushing further back, and it was I missed the first like 5, 6 days of the season, and everybody just apparently all the guys I ran into were all like, oh, all the bulls we're going home. We hunted the first 6, 7 days of the season. Like all the bulls are pushing further back into the wilderness, and I had already come closer back by like the border of the wilderness and the national forest,
yeah,
and guys would run into me on their way back out, and they're like, oh, all the bulls are way further back in there, and I was hunting the same like 12 bulls in this canyon that was right on the edge. Everybody was walking past them. They weren't there.
yeah.
Past them, I'm like, oh yep, I haven't seen much here. I must have to go further. Like I was
And
hunting
that's
12
yeah,
right there in the same canyon every single morning.
yeah. And a lot of people think like this whole you know the craze is to see how far we can get from the trailhead, right? And the grand scheme of things, if you do your scouting right, you don't really have to do as much as you think you do. Because a lot of people overlook that. A lot of people think
Yeah,
like, oh, I got to be 20 miles in there. But the reality of it is, I mean, there's especially in like a good limited draw, tag like you were in, like there's going to be uh there's going to be good bulls somewhere.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was only a mile at that one point. A group that I was hunting, I was literally a mile and a half, probably a mile and a half off this trail where I could glass them. And then, to get to them was another mile.
Right.
But it was like some rough stuff that nobody was even walking into there. But it wasn't that far. It was just rough. And so they were in there. They were being lazy, hanging low. They weren't even high. They were at like 8,500 feet, 9,000 feet when, the peak above them, if they wanted to, they could have went up to like 10.3, 10.5.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of rock, but it just goes to show you, like, don't overlook some of those areas that, like you said, you can park right off the road, do some glass, and hike in, sit. But
yeah, it's I think it's a big thing with me, like being able to glass a lot of country and save those legs, let your eyes do the walking, and by no means, I've only been doing this whole Western thing for 4 years, so I've just been very fortunate these last 4 years to put some stuff on the wall, and more importantly, fill the freezer. Right, so that's why we do it. So I mean,
yeah. And I've only been following your page for like a little over a year, I think.
Yeah.
Finally found it and ran into it. I just loved your style, and it's just been, I mean, it's cool now that you know more like the backstory of where you came from too.
Yeah, I mean,
it's see how serious. I would call you a serious hunter.
Yeah.
Like you go out food on your own. I can't wait till we have a chance to hunt together someday, man.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Like I know you hunt. You have a good hunting buddy you always hunt with, right?
Yeah. My brother.
Yeah. So you just can't hunt with anybody. I think that's like I was fortunate to get hooked up with a guy that I worked with, back in South Dakota, and I learned a lot. I would say 95%, 100% of the Western stuff through him, and watching him do stuff, and it led to me being successful. So I would say all of it, or dang near all of it, to him as far as how to do this whole Western thing and to be successful, and to what to look for. And he comes from a big whitetail state of Ohio, and he'll be the first to tell you he won't even pick up a whitetail shed. It's so funny, he's all mule deer now, which I don't blame him. He's got some studs on the wall, and I'm waiting to see that message that he's got a big buck down this year. It's going to take a big one for him to really entice him this year. He's got a good West River tag too, so I'm really excited to see what turns up down there. But yeah, so he's usually the first guy I message, or when it comes to successful, especially on the inReach, stuff like that, along with my dad. But yeah, it's a special thing, the whole Western scene, especially to come, be that kid that was always looking at Cabela's magazines. Like, I don't know I could ever do that or how it's ever going to work logistically, but the good Lord somehow made it work, and here I am doing this whole thing. And you're doing hunts that people dream about and save up their entire life for. So to take advantage of it, to get off the mountain a couple of days early is not doing yourself any justice. The job will be there, the social media will be there, but these times that you live in that tent in those frosty grounds, and you're chasing bugling bulls or rutting bucks, it won't always be there. So it's important.
And at the time you're thinking you're miserable.
Yeah.
But you get off the mountain, you're gonna wish you were back up there being miserable.
Yeah. Exactly.
Man, so
yeah.
Soak it up, take it. I think that's a pretty good piece of advice for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, like I listen to a lot of the Kifaru Cast guys, and
okay.
So I don't know, I like how they are. And I mean, there's a lot of good podcasts out there, but they say the same thing. As soon as you get off that mountain, you're wishing you were back on it, regardless if it was a 2-mile hike to get water, if it was you're puffed out because of hydration or dehydrated food for 5 days, but it's just it all makes it worth it when you get home and you're scrolling through everybody's stories. You're like, man, I wish I was a part of it, or I wish I was back on the mountain or something like that. That's definitely that's a special thing, that's for sure.
It is, man. And it's just, even when what I learned here this year, just my first solo hunt, elk hunting, usually the last 7-8 years I've had a cameraman with me, which is my brother, but it's always somebody there to help you with anything.
Yeah.
There'd be a pet, whatever. And that solo challenge was definitely a great learning experience for me. We use the term like, check your own toughness. That's part of it, but it's not even from a physical standpoint. It's definitely just from a mental standpoint when you're out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
On your
The mentality and the emotional aspect of it, you like
yes,
you question a lot, and then you have that other individual that you trust wholeheartedly with everything, right? In that moment, you're gonna have to. Things will get done when you don't ask the other person like, hey, we need to cut wood, or we need to go get water, or did you glass this basin, or did you glass that basin, or
well, even like one of my buddies told me like I had to go up on this nasty mountain road to get where I wanted to hike in, and there was another two vehicles up there that had camp up there. They didn't like backpack in off the road; they just camped off of it, and they were just like short axle lifted Jeeps, and I had my
yeah,
2019 Ram, and I was a couple of these areas I was like, you were puckered, dude. It was sketch, and you mess
yeah,
up. It's one of those things like you do mess up or don't pay attention for 3 seconds, you're rolling off 500 feet,
yeah,
60 feet. And so like I got up there, and my buddy mentioned like, yeah, having somebody with you that is that gas or brake to tell you like, hey, dude, like I don't think we should take this trail.
yeah,
You don't have that when you're by yourself. You're just like, okay, I'll do it, and then you don't realize what you got yourself into potentially. And so then I was stressed for like 2 days because there's a couple switchbacks that are like,
yeah,
can I make it back down on that? Like, can I make that switch back? Like, and you don't have anybody there to help you. Like, oh, you have 18 inches to back up. You don't have
yeah, yeah,
like
exactly.
the
My
phone challenge you.
my first year in in South Dakota, we went up to Montana to hunt, and it was kind of my first backcountry backpack. Even though it was kind of eastern Montana, like central Montana, but it was still Montana, right? A bunch of
Yeah.
breaks and just that kind of nasty stuff. Like I didn't really know what I was getting into. I had a decent pack and some flashy camo, and I didn't really know what the heck I was doing. And
Yep.
yeah, we I didn't have a tag or anything. I just hiked around with Nick. And watch him chase muleys and stuff while we camped on the Missouri. It was awesome, but I learned a lot. And when I first got out there, I thought you had to have everything in the kitchen sink, med kits and freaking survival kits and all this other stuff. And now, like, I'm not packing any of that. Like, if I don't use it, like, it's not going. I learned about a lot of his stories early on. He hunted up here for 7 years and hunted all sheep in the Brooks Range and stuff like that. And I
Wow.
remember him telling me early on that when they were packing out, they were pouring out dry packets of oatmeal to save weight. And I thought it blew my mind. Like that didn't even make sense. And then like hiking around this tundra for miles and with a 40, 50 pound pack, versus, it's like, I understand now. Like I'm pouring out all the water I don't need.
Yep.
I'm eating all the food I can because I don't want to carry one extra
Yeah.
ounce of it. Yeah. So ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain, right? If
100%.
it doesn't work, I ain't bringing it. So
Yep. Dude, and it's funny, the more you start doing that stuff, like the more you realize how much you don't need.
yeah. And
You know?
I'm still bad with it. I'll bring extra stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm learning every time. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I even on this elk hunt I was on this year, I thought I was being minimal. And I got out, and then like I tried to be just mindful when you get back. I'm like, okay, what didn't I use?
yeah.
And start like narrowing down and actually learning from those hunts to be like, okay, I really didn't need that,
Yeah.
that piece or whatever it was, or maybe some stuff that you do need.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, that's been a big thing, like I sleep really cold. I'm just a really cold natured. I think
Yep.
being a coastal creature, right? Hands and feet, right? That's a big thing. But I've been doing a lot more research, and like the gear you have in your pack is designed, like everything you have, it doesn't produce heat, right? You are the engine that produces all this heat. So it doesn't matter if you have a $600 bag or $500 boots and all this other stuff. If you don't take care of that properly, you're going to die. Like you will die. It doesn't matter if you have $10,000 worth of gear in your pack or on your body. If you don't do those things properly, you're going to die. You'll freeze to death, and you'll be eaten like a human lollipop to a bear. Like that's just you'll freeze to death and die. But I've been learning a lot doing this whole Alaska thing. It's don't pay no attention to her. She doesn't mean anything.
She's like, you're gonna die.
Yeah, yeah.
Die.
Heather's good stuff. She's funny. She can't bake worth. I hope she's listening. She can't bake worth nothing either.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, Yeah, we used to work together. She's down in Louisiana now. She's good people. But um, yeah, it's definitely what's up, Foster? Um, but yeah, it's ever changing. Like I'm pulling stuff out of my bag, and it's awesome. Like I don't need this much paracord. I'm
Yeah.
cutting stuff off, and
Yep.
it's it's pretty awesome. That's for sure. You find what works for you, regardless of what the brand is.
Exactly.
Regardless, it doesn't matter. Yeah, if it's from Costco or from Kuiu, Kafaru, First Light, it doesn't matter. Any of the if you don't use it properly, it's just taking up space.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed. I remember when I bought my Kuiu pack and everybody made fun of me because I was wearing a Kuiu pack with like some of my Sitka gear, and I'm like, Sitka makes shit for packs.
yeah. You're right. They do. I mean, I think they're getting better with it, but they're not known.
Yes. Back, 4 years ago when I
Yeah,
first bought it, their packs weren't good. Like, yeah, they're trying to, get up to the game. But for me, uh, that was what I really enjoyed at the time. That was the pack that I really liked. So and you go with what fits you, what works well for you.
yeah. And I run an EXO now, and I do love that pack. I've had packed everything from turkeys, western South Dakota to caribou in the tundra, right? And it's worked great. I have no issues with that pack right now. So, but at the same time, the gearhead, the gear junkie is always thinking about changing something, or like, well, how can this work, or that looks cool, But at the same time, it's like if it's not broke, why fix it, right?
That's how I go back to. There's a couple things that you just want to try just because it's fun to try new stuff.
Yeah,
But then you're like, well, I don't want to spend another $500.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like good gear is not cheap, right? But
Right.
at the same time, good gear will keep you on the mountain or in the prairie longer. So that extra day, you could be successful or non-successful. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, dude, the initial scent packs are awesome. I've talked to those guys down at Western Hunting Expo. They're good dudes.
Yeah,
Their packs are legit. I put one on. And actually for the solo hunter aspect a little bit, they're I've been really debating on getting one because they have these killer like carbon hooks on the side
yeah,
where you hook on like more meat and stuff. They're
yeah.
they're pretty
I've
impressive.
I've seen a couple of the guys I follow. But I haven't had any chance like hands on. Like the Kuiu pack was the first one I bought. I bought the Icon Pro when I first got out
Yep.
to South Dakota. Never really used it to pack anything out besides like initial hunts in like the first 2 years, and I bought the EXO. And I've just been running that ever since. Everybody's got their own poison or their
Yeah,
own brand. Like I said, whatever works for you, go forth and conquer, right?
exactly.
So
Exactly. I agree. We're all out there trying to do the same thing. It really doesn't matter past that.
yeah, so like it's so funny. Like the guy, Nick, I hunt with opening season last year. We're sitting there at the truck getting ready to pack in, and I look down at his quiver, and he's got 3 arrows, and that's all he's got. Like, and I'm pretty sure one of them was from the year before he shot his buck with, and I'm like laughing. I'm like, is that all the arrows you have? He goes, but he's one of those guys and go out there, not shoot for 6 months, and go through the paces, and he's lights out, right? He's just a natural, he's athlete. I mean, he's a killer. It's
Yep.
just funny. We're sitting there. I'm looking down at his arrows, and I only carry 5. It's not like a big deal, but it's just like, when was the last time you shot those arrows? Like, a month ago. Like they're good.
Yep.
Well, it's yeah, and then he shoots. Yeah, it was now 2 days later. He double lunged that buck at 40 yards, and I'm pretty sure that that was a complete pass through. Cleaned it up, put it back in the quiver. It'd probably be good enough for this year. So that's
Yeah.
just how he is.
Dude,
He's
that's how my buddy Matt is, my co-host, which is why he's
yeah,
just a killer. He's an athlete. He stepped
yeah,
up August 31st. He's busy farming all summer.
yeah,
On the 31st, shoots his bow, 80 yards, his first 3 shots. He pie plates him. He sends me the video, and he's like,
yeah,
all right, we're still good to go. Like,
yeah.
dude.
That's how he is. And then I go down the wormhole because he's been shooting a lot longer and he's got a lot more stuff on the ground than I have. So I'm doing all this crazy tuning, what I think is crazy tuning, and watching all the Levi Morgan and the John Dudley videos, and you're just trying to make the most of it, right? I'm trying to get as perfect as I can, and I think the animals deserve that. But like he'll go out and we're good, and just thump anything that walks, and it's like, God, man, and he's
Just talented.
yeah, he's good at what he does, and I think it's important to surround yourself with people like that, right? So
Right.
I think it makes you better. Um,
I've said it 100 times. If I went to start hunting with Matt 6 years ago, Like, he's made me such a better hunter. My buddy Justin down in New Mexico, getting all the hunts in with him. Like, those guys, like, I learned all the great ethics and, learning portions of hunting from my dad, being
Yep.
out with him and learning what a young hunter should learn. And then, you start continuing to put yourself around more people and then, building your circle a little bit. And
Yep.
a couple of those guys have just expanded my knowledge so much, made me a better hunter. It's cool. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. I mean, that base layer, the first thing you build of the house is a foundation, right?
Yeah.
You don't put all the fancy fixings in it until it has a solid foundation. I think that starts early on. And, my first deer I ever shot was with a single barrel 16 gauge. And, we big in the South, we hunt deer with dogs, as we run.
Yep.
That's growing up. That's how we hunted, it's because the woods are so thick and it's just how it is,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it started it off, and that was important to see how all that went down. And I remember early on, I shot this little bird with a BB gun. It was like a little finch, and I couldn't believe I'd shot it. And I'm sitting there, and Dad watched it all go down through the kitchen window, and he knocks on the window and he tells me to go get it and brings it in the house, and we pluck it right there, and he fries it up with some batter, and I ate it right then and there. And he was like, if you're going to take it, you're going to eat it. So yeah,
That's awesome.
that was early on, and I was like, I'm not eating this freaking thing. But no, it stuck with me for a long time then, and it's been hopefully the people I hunt with, and they have, for the most part, we do the same thing. So
Exactly. Devin
it's
goes, some people are shooters, some people are killers. That's like the truth. Some people are like, same thing with any sport. Some people are the shooters in practice. Some guys are
yeah, yeah,
game.
it exactly like you can, yeah, it doesn't matter if you shoot, like that's how he is, like it's just funny, go out there. He's like, oh yeah, he double lunged him at 40 yards, tipped over in 6. All my archery shots have been, not your typical, shoulder forward, feeding, like mine's been alerted, top of the ridge, put it in his chest, how is this? Yeah, both of my archery bucks have been like that. So even my doe was like that. She was alerted, but all within under 20 yards. It's just like, yeah,
Yep.
got to make that time count whenever it happens. So
It's seconds or less.
yeah, I mean, as you know, it happens in a flash, and you better be ready to rock and roll. If not, you might not get that chance the whole season again.
Exactly. Well, David, thanks for taking the time out of your
Yeah,
day,
Bubba.
a couple months. So I'm glad we could finally make it happen.
Yeah, I appreciate the time.
Any closing statements for people before we drop off?
Nah, I mean, I wouldn't consider myself a Western guy, but if my big thing is persistent pays. Persistence is key. If you want it, go get it.
Agreed.
It took me till I was, I don't know, 28, 27 till I shot my first buck with the bow. And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's all been downhill from there, and it's been a learning curve for sure. Every day, every it should be something that you learn from. That's for sure.
Agreed. David, thanks for jumping on, you guys. If you want to follow David's adventures, I suggest it. Mustache Memo is the handle.
Yeah.
You will enjoy his page. It's really cool. He posts a lot of good stories, a lot of good phone photography, which we've talked about in our podcast.
Yeah.
Good
That's
stuff.
All through the phone. Well, Jordan, I appreciate it, man. You have a blessed day.
Yes, sir. Talk to you later. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Later.
There you have it, you guys. Had David on today. Make sure you go check out his page. Thanks for tuning in to episode 140 of the Live Beyond Average podcast. I hope you love this one and have a great rest of your hunting season. We will, Devin just commented, best handle ever, by the way. I completely agree. It's pretty awesome. So you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you later.